At this time, the city of Plattsburgh is holding a public hearing to hear public comment on proposed local law P3 of 2022, a local law adding Article 3 open meetings video conference to Chapter 14 boards, commissions, and committees to the city code of the city of Plattsburgh. I'll now entertain a motion to open the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second. Councilor Bob, all in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is now open. I'll now recognize anybody in the audience who wish to make a public comment on this local law. Seeing none, I'll now take a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second. Councilor Bott, all in favor?
Aye.
That public hearing is now closed. I now, the city of Plattsburgh would now like to hold a public hearing to hear public comment on proposed local law P4 of 2022, a local law adding Chapter 169 fire insurance proceeds to the city code of the city of Plattsburgh. I'll now take a motion to open this public hearing. Motion by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Bott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This public hearing is now open. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to share their comments on this local law? Seeing none, I'll now take a motion to close this local law or this public hearing. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing is now closed. City of Plattsburgh would like to now open a public hearing to satisfy the public participation requirement for the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG. The city of Plattsburgh plans to submit a consolidated funding application to New York State's HCR's Community Development Block Grant Public Infrastructure Program for water main replacement near the former U.S. Air Force Base. A public hearing consistent with federal requirements found in 24 CFR 570.468 is required prior to the submittal of the grant applications under the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, administered by New York State's HCR to seek direction and comment of the application. At this moment, I'd like to take a motion to open the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now open. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to make a public comment based on this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll now take a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Kelly, second. Councilor Bob, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. At this time, I'd like to call the July 21st, 2022 regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh to order. It is now 5:07 p.m. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Carlin, will you please conduct a roll call?
Mayor Rosenquist.
Here.
Councilor Canales. Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Gibbs.
Here.
Councilor Talon.
Here.
Councilor Bob.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here. All councilors have received a copy of the minutes of the July 7th, 2022 regular meeting. If there are no additions, deletions, or corrections, I'll now entertain a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Gibbs. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'll now recognize those in the audience who wish to share their thoughts and concerns with the council on any topic. Please come to the podium to be acknowledged. When called upon, we ask that you please state your legal name and address for the record. In accordance with the organizational rules of order, all speakers will be given 5 minutes to address the council. Seeing none, will not.
Hello, everyone, and my name is Julie Bond, 49 Main Mill Street. I'd like to welcome everyone to the summer we've all been waiting for. The weather's, temperatures are great. I want to apologize for always reading directly from a paper. Kind of keeps me focused, centered. I'd like to take this time to talk very briefly about the farmers market and how it's grown since we had to move down to the Green Street location. Since I took over the manager's position, I have been able to recruit 40 to 50 vendors yearly. When we moved down to the Green Street in 2021, we still had 46 vendors there. Not all full-time, but a large number were. This year, 2022 season has been slower. We only have 35 vendors, not all full-time again. What's the cause of this? Well, I've taken the time to talk to past and present vendors. The reasons range from economy to the fact that the market has a lot more restrictions, sales tax IDs, insurance, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest reason was our new location. We find ourselves up against other activities in the area that aren't so out of the way or hard to navigate to. However, this year we have grown. We have a lot more entertainment. This week, we have the town meeting there. We even have Taylor LaValle coming in August. We have an RC car demonstration that will be awesome, and even a kids balloon fight, as I've mentioned before. We have food trucks almost every week. So yes, we are growing. Yes, we do need the space. Yes, we do need to keep the vendors close together for practical reasons. We don't object to the Harborside Master Plan. Just don't take away all of our space where we have our activities. Don't landlock us. And please, don't make it difficult for our customers to navigate to their favorite vendors. Many of our customers are elderly, disabled, and some, like myself, a little bit handicapped. Let us show the community what we can do with our area that we were moved to. Don't assume we won't or can't grow. This is only our second year. All good things take time. The market is a staple of our community. And I am willing to be the magician that is willing to show you her magic tricks, but it all comes in time. I also want to make a comment on the condition of our building. It was 93 this last weekend. This weekend coming, I can't even imagine what that building's going to be like. I understand that our new improvements are not something that you wanted to put in your budgets, but I highly recommend it. With all the new improvements for Harborside, you're keeping a shack in the middle of so many mansions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else who'd like to share their thoughts and concerns with the council at any time? Seeing none, we'll now go to committee reports. Each standing committee is chaired by a councilor, and I'll call upon that chairperson of each committee, starting with City Operations Councilor Bond.
We have a couple resolutions on tonight's agenda. They vary from very important things. We've got the mayor and the clerk up to go to the NICOM Fall Training School, which is a great opportunity. We've got a fun local block party up for approval, some more community art projects, and we also have a resolution regarding our printer service for the city. So that's what we'll be looking at tonight. And that's all I have to report this time.
Thank you. Finance and Economic Development, we do have resolution 7.156 through 7.161 on tonight's agenda. We had a good meeting last week. We'll continue on as noted in that meeting. It's budget time. We'll be preparing the city's budget, starting that process. Last year probably started a little bit later than now, but there are times when I felt it could get started a little bit earlier without a lot of pressure on the department head. So with that as well, I am looking at leveraging the OpenGov platform to do some of this budgeting. As most of the council is aware, that process or that platform is available for consumption, and most of us here have accessed it already. So as that process continues, as the budget continues to develop and that process continues to develop, I'll ensure, as I did last year, to include councilors in those conversations. City Infrastructure Council.
We just completed paving Bridge Street, first of, not the first, but some of that much paving we're doing this year. One thing I did notice is our striping is all wearing out. So I think, I'm hoping that we have that scheduled for this year. I know it's expensive, but It really makes for traffic flow where people can't see the lanes or see what the turn lanes are. It's pretty much become non-existent throughout the city. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I had gone down to the farmer's market this past week, and I was very disappointed to see the exhaust fans they put in. I have a bigger exhaust fan in my bathroom. Those are not exhaust fans, they're tiny and totally insufficient. I don't know who spec'd those out, but they're not what was needed. Anyway, hopefully we can get that corrected at some time. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Public Safety Council analysis not available. That meeting was postponed until Monday. There are a number of updates in that meeting, as well as the regular monthly reports we provide. There's going to be 2 additional reports included on that council meeting. One is the subject management report, which is anytime a officer is involved in a use of force incident, that is included, as well as the PD complaint report as well. So that's going to be included in that meeting agenda. Westford Public Library, Councilor Town.
Our meeting is next Tuesday, so I'll have something to report after then.
Great. MLD, Councilor Gibbs.
I have nothing to report.
Any reports from you, Dean Schlaf? And tonight we do not have any special committee reports. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the payrolls for various city departments for the weeks ending July 20th, 2022, in the amount of $408,912,14. Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Bach. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Talon,
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes,
Carried. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the bills audited by the Common Council for the weeks ending July 22nd, 2020, in the amount of $2,500,876.89. Motion, Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Talon,
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
yes,
Carried. Before voting on this, I will make a note that item 7.149 and 7.150 include the adoption of the local law and the pending resolution associated to that local law, even though it does not say that in the. Sorry. Oh, sorry, just 149. I apologize. Okay, just 149. I apologize. Before voting on the following resolutions, I'll note that the majority of the resolutions have been thoroughly discussed by the appropriate committees and department heads. We're now taking action on these items in large part due to the recommendations of those committees. Ms. Carlin, will you please read the titles of the resolutions to be acted upon?
Item 7.149, adoption of local law P-3 2022, a local law adding Article 3, open meetings video conference to Chapter 14, boards, commissions, and committees to the city code of the city of Plattsburgh. This local law shall take effect immediately upon approval by the mayor and filing with the New York Secretary of State. The entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the Common Council is hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of the said local laws made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Motion. Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Talon,
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.150, adoption of local law P-4 2022, a local law adding Chapter 169, fire insurance proceeds to the city code of the city of Plattsburgh. This local law should take effect immediately upon approval by the mayor, filing with the New York Secretary of State. The entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the Common Council is hereby enacted without reading thereof, and a copy of the said local laws made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Motion. Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Bach. Discussion. Roll
So,
call.
well,
Oh, sorry.
just wanted to clarify something in case, we have people watching live or going to catch up later. This, just to be clear, so this local law does not have anything to do with properties we own. So for example, the Crate Center had a fire, that recycling plant on Reeves Lane had a fire. I mean, this has nothing to do with that. This is completely separate. Just in case anybody is watching and thinks that one might have to do with the other. Just want to be clear on that.
Property owned or property within the city that's not single family residence that we're on. So any other property.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.151, authorizing city clerk to attend Nikon Fall Training School.
Motion, Counselor Bob, second. Counselor Gibbs, discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.152, authorizing approval for upward bound to engage in community art projects on Terry Gordon Bike Path.
Motion by Counselor Bob, second by Counselor Gibbs, discussion.
Where is this located? I know we talked about it at the meeting, but I could not visualize
You
where
know where
this is.
Sailors Beach Bridge is over the railroad tracks, the one that you drive over?
Yes.
It's under, it's that bridge. There's like a little tunnel right there underneath that bridge.
Oh,
So they're gonna paint that underneath that tunnel, but in that tunnel.
that's part of the Terry Gordon.
Yes.
Oh, it's not what I was thinking at all.
All the way to the end.
Got it now. Okay, okay. I was visualizing a completely different path.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.153, authorizing approval of street closure on July 23rd, 2022 from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. for community block party on Grace Ave between Ash and 28th Street.
Motion by Counselor Talon, second by Counselor Bob, discussion.
I might make a cameo there. We'll see.
Me? All right. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Item 7.154, authorizing mayor to attend Nikon Fall Training School.
Motion, Counselor Bob, second. Second by Counselor Talon, discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.155, authorizing mayor to review updated managed print service contracts and requests.
Motion, Counselor Bob, second. Counselor Kelly, discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
yes,
Carried.
Item 7.156, authorizing approval of zoning code update CFA application.
Motion. Counselor Bob, second. Counselor Talon, discussion.
Yes. Can we review both 715657, 58? I just want to make sure I'm clear on a couple of things. So this one, approval of the zoning code update CFA application. I was looking at my notes from the meeting the other night. I just want to make sure that I was clear about that part. So this is to redo the whole city code. What is the city's financial obligation for this? What is the match and what's the financial obligation from the city? How much is the grant for? I guess let's start with that.
The Required grants, local match is 10%.
And so how much is that 10%?
For the project that we're talking about, which is full rewrite of the zoning code and subdivision ordinance. The full project cost is $250,000. We're requesting $100,000 in grant funding as part of this application. The city would be responsible for the remaining $150,000. So even though the grant doesn't only require 10% local match in order to fill out the full project budget, the city would put up 150 states.
When is the expected refund on that? So, I mean, do we pay all of it up front?
Yeah, every grant
Right.
that I work on is reimbursable, so we spend the money up front and then we submit the reimbursement.
And how long do you think something like this would take? Timeframe?
For the grant application, the awards are announced in December, we usually get contracts the following spring. And then any expenses incurred after the award date, so right after December, is eligible for reimbursement. There's a separate resolution on tonight's agenda requesting that the council set aside $250,000 to pay for the entirety of the zoning code and subdivision update. If the city is awarded the grant funding come December, any expenses that we incur after that would be eligible for reimbursement under that grant. Because of the grant funding, the way that the funding is split up, any money that we spend between now and December would be non-reimbursable, but because we're talking about a project budget of $250,000 and grant funding of $100K, there will be more than $100,000 in expenses come December that we will have yet to spend that will be eligible for reimbursement under the grant.
Okay, and so time frame again, it would be several months or years? Because I know one of these that we talked about the other night, we could be looking at years for reimbursement. So
Yeah, so
this
the
one,
full project, getting a total rewrite of the zoning subdivision ordinance would be somewhere between 1 and 2 years, I would imagine. The grant funding through this program usually has a 5-year time limit, but people that endeavor to complete it much faster than that.
so when we get this grant, what is it going to be used for exactly?
So the city's subdivision and zoning ordinances are out of date. They have been cobbled together over the past several decades from a series of updates that weren't necessarily coordinated to the degree that they should have been, which has led to a series of inconsistencies, contradictions, and ambiguities in code that resulted in a lot of the problems that we saw in the prime project and making permitting, and results in ongoing issues with the zoning and planning boards because of those ambiguities and the necessity of them trying to make an interpretation, which is never a good thing when you're talking about zoning.
No, I understand that part. What I'm asking is, are we paying someone this money that we're getting?
Yeah, we have a draft RFP to solicit proposals from consultants to assist.
That's what it was. Okay, so this is to pay consultants to do the work. Is that
The
correct?
the resolution that is under discussion right now is to acknowledge that as part of the CFA application for the funding, that the city is prepared to put up a 10% match for the grant project. The $250,000 spending resolution that I believe is 1 or 2 resolutions ahead of this one, that is for transferring money with immediate effect into the economic development budget to start that process. of rewriting.
Right. So 7158 is for that $250,000 transfer.
Correct.
Thank you, Matt. That was very helpful. And then I'm going to ask you again for 7157.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Matt, just to recap, I do recall you saying that this zoning project is a very high priority for the city right now, right?
It is the #1 priority listed in the city's draft comprehensive plan. It is absolutely necessary to have effective governance and development for the next 2 or 3 decades.
And if we want to be pretty straight about the housing issues and why the city of Plattsburgh is very problematic to solve those housing issues, it is because of our 1990s zoning code and the mishmash hodgepodge approach of changes made to that zoning code. This is intended to fix that. That's the whole purpose of updating our zoning code based on our comprehensive master plan, and it is well beyond needed.
So I agree that the zoning codes need to be rewritten. I just don't agree with continuing to pay consultants to do all this work. It's a lot of money.
If we had the expertise internally, we would have done it already, but we don't. So here we are. Now, this is also going to be an effort, just like the other efforts were to rewrite the comprehensive master plan. It will take internal resources as well as external experts.
Well, the other impression I have is that part of the issue with our zoning code is that we have, as Matt mentioned, all these ambiguities, contradictions that have come from it being done internally, hodgepodge, piece by piece over the years and decades. The idea of bringing in people with this expertise would be that we would have a unified, clear, and objective code. So I think that that's important.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
No,
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.157, authorizing approval of Harborside Master Plan Phase 1 implementation CFA application.
Motion by Counselor Bob, second by Counselor Kelly. Discussion.
so my question is the same as 7156 was. So if you could you go back through the money for us again?
Sure, so this is, again, acknowledging to the state that the city is prepared to commit a local match contribution up to $500,000 to facilitate construction of what we're calling Phase 1 of the Harborside Master Plan. The key components of phase one include a pedestrian trail extending from the intersection of Bridge and Green Streets along the water line of the Saranac River and Lake Champlain after Eastern Park, and a new playground to be installed near the Farmers Market location.
So the local match is 500,000. What's the total grant possibility?
I'm sorry.
You said the local match was 500,000.
Local match is up to 500,000.
Up to.
Yep. And that would be for a total construction, total grant funding of 1.5 million.
So we're applying for 1.5.
Apply for 1.5 million grant funding, to which the city, if the full amount is awarded, would have to commit a local match of half $1 million.
Matt, can you tell us how the Saranac River Trail Phase 3 fits into this particular project?
Sure, so Saranac River Trail Phase 3 funding has been in place for several years. Not much progress has been made because of our focus on Saranac River Trail Phase 2 and the DRI and other projects. But the footprint and the goals of Phase 3 align broadly with the pedestrian trail that is envisioned here at Harborside Master Plan. So as we had a stack of different funding sources that contributed to Saranac River Trail Phase 2 and New York State Parks Grant, federal funding from DOT, that would be the same type of structure we would be looking at for SRT Phase 3 if this grant is awarded. We have funding from DOT in place, and then this LRAP Phase 1 grant would supplement that funding.
Now, Matt, I know we discussed this quite a bit at the finance meeting, but just again, for the people that might be listening, what we're voting on here is approving the grant application. We're not approving the Harborside plan with this vote, and we do still have flexibility within the plan based on this application, right?
That's correct. All this is doing is saying to New York State that the city is prepared to put up this amount of money if they were to commit to the grant funding for this project.
And when the grant money comes in, what is it going to be allocated for? The actual work itself?
Yeah, this would be for design work and construction.
So we still would have room, for example, though, to look at improvements to the farmers market building and to look at some of the other things that have come up as concerns with regard to the plan. We still
Yeah,
have.
there's a considerable amount of flexibility built into this grant application to allow the city to make changes based on further rounds of public input from our side master plan. So this does not lock us into any specific routes of the trail. It just commits the money to a general goal of putting a pedestrian trail from one point to another.
I just wanted to make sure to clarify that because, you know, I don't want people to think that if we approve the ability to apply for this grant, that means that we put our stamp of approval on the plan. We haven't yet, so I just want to make sure that's clear.
I'll note that the point of having these grant writers and grant applications is to obtain money to do development project for the city of Plattsburgh. It's a little challenging, again, going back to hiring people to do this work because we don't have the internal resources to do it, to then say, okay, we're not going to apply for a grant. That's the whole point of having these grants and leveraging the amount of infrastructure money that is coming into New York State for community space improvements, for placemaking, for infrastructure improvements, and things like that. So, and 'tis the season right now, this is the CFA process, and this is part of the season for completing these things. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
No.
Counselor Talon,
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes,
Counselor Moore,
Yes,
Carried.
item 7.158, authorizing approval of budget change for zoning code rewrite.
Motion, Counselor Bob, second. Counselor Kelly, discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
No.
Counselor Talon,
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
yes,
Counselor Moore,
yes,
Carried.
item 7.159, authorizing approval of the mayor as the certifying officer for the city of Plattsburgh water main replacement projects, environmental review record.
Motion. Counselor Bob, second by Counselor Kelly, discussion.
So why is this necessary? I know this came up as a last minute addition to our finance meeting. Why is it necessary that we have a certifying officer for this particular project?
For this particular grant application, this is community development block grants. Money One of the changes that agency made to their grant application process is that the state and federal environmental review processes have to be completed prior to the grant submittal deadline, which is next Friday. So this resolution names the mayor as a certifying officer for those environmental reviews necessitated by the grant.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob. Yes. Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.160, approval of safe routes to school CFA application.
Motion by Counselor Bob, second. Counselor Kelly, discussion.
Yes, I don't believe this was on our finance meeting agenda. Can we get an overview and explanation of it? I saw the documents, but
Sure, this is for infrastructure improvements, widening the sidewalks around some of the city's elementary and middle schools. This would commit the city to a local match of up to $450,000 for a total project cost of $900,000. So there's a 50% match required for this particular grant program. So you would get $450,000 if the full amount is awarded from the state, and the city would be responsible for the remaining.
so is this, excuse me, is this for all the elementary schools?
It's not for all the elementary
Oak Street?
schools, it's for a selected few around which the bicycle infrastructure and the pedestrian infrastructure is among the less desirable of our public schools. So that's why they were chosen, and that's where it's coming from.
And what's the time frame on this?
Yeah, the awards are announced in December. We would have, if awarded, a contract in place by spring. Then there would be a search process for a consultant to assist us with the design and construction work. Then it would proceed according to the schedule you would expect for any other capital project. So likely no construction until later in the year of 2023.
Now, Matt, just to, when we were having the grant conversation, I know we talked about some upcoming grants. I did have a note that there was like a safe streets infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. Is that this one?
That's
That's not the same as the pedestrian safety action plan that we have also talked about, which is also a grant for the, I think there's 5 different intersections identified as part of that, but the primary intersection was the Cornelia Broad Street intersection that was part of that separate grant. So there are 2 kind of separate pedestrian safety, safe access to schools and increasing pedestrian access and safety grants that we're actively pursuing and completing. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs.
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob.
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.161, authorized termination of commercial lease with Champlain Valley Transportation Museum.
Motion by Counselor Kelly, second by Counselor Bob, discussion.
Yes, so
It's a simple termination of their lease agreement. The contract was in the supporting documents of the termination. There was a little bit of a typo on there, which was then corrected after the fact with the leaseholder based on just a misunderstanding of that person. So the termination of the lease starts effective immediately.
so what will be the fate of all that property?
That's yet to be determined. But we are in conversations with CDC to come up with a plan subsequent to the vacating of that property. Right now, unfortunately, the Transportation Museum hasn't operated for 3 years, I think, around there. 95% of their equipment is gone, has been loaned off to different museums and organizations. I think they have one thing that's in there that they just don't have a home for yet.
So what transportation items will be left behind? Any? None. Okay.
At the end of this, none will be left behind. There are a number of buildings out there that are still being used. There's a 6-bay garage that earlier this year or late last year was approved by council to continue leasing that out, which we have a 6-month lease. We continue to lease that out. There's another kids organization that rents a building out there, and then another not-for-profit that has space out there. They fix up bikes for underprivileged and folks that need bicycle transportation. They're out there as well. They'll remain out there. But this organization will no longer operate in that space. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs,
Yes.
Counselor Talon.
Yes.
Counselor Bob,
Yes.
Counselor Moore.
Yes.
Item 7.1, authorizing bond issuance to pay for the cost of purchasing a new.
Motion. Counselor Bob, second. Motion and second. Second by Counselor Talon. Discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to jump into something at this point. You know, thus far in the year, we've committed a lot of money to bonding for different projects. Approved paying out for a lot of projects. And I don't want to weigh in on any of the individual projects. They're all good projects. But was doing some math, and you know, we only have a limited amount of revenue. We're reaching the point where we spent about all of the practical revenue that we can at this point. I think we're gonna have to be a little bit more selective in the second half of the year on what we spend. We don't want to leave the city saddled with too much debt that will be around for 10, 20, 30 years. They're all, you know, they're all good projects. They're all things that can and should be done. But I think at some point, we're gonna have to be a little more selective and start putting off some of the things that aren't absolutely necessary until we get a better handle on this. I started doing the math on some of the things that we've approved so far and what they're gonna cost us long term. I don't think we should overspend our reach and get into a situation where we've committed to too many projects all at once.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. At our finance meeting last week, we talked about this. As of November, we're going to be bonding 16 million. Our cash needs for 2022 are 13 million. Our general fund payment for 2023 is going to be 1,600,000. Our own 5-year plan that this council approved has us underwater by, I think, well, I have the document, 2026, something to that effect. So in other words, we are, right here, we are on a pathway of not being able to pay those bond payments out of the general fund by 2026. So I agree with you, Jeff.
While that may be true on that part, the one thing is when it comes to the end, in this specific purpose, when it comes to this ambulance and this fire engine, this is kind of the cost of keeping the lights on. I mean, we were told very clearly by the fire chief that the 23-year-old fire engine that we've got operating is already past its lifespan. So I just don't see the like, this is one of those things like having to buy bread. Like, we have to feed kids. This is something we need.
It still runs.
I understand it still runs, but but we know that these are going to take 2 to 3 years to get to us.
Yeah.
So if they're going to take 2 to 3 years to get to us, it may not be running in 2 to 3 years. Not to mention that we're still also spending money on repairs constantly.
Well, I don't know how it is in other people's households, but in my household, if we don't have the money to buy it, we don't buy it. If we can't afford a new car, we don't buy a new car.
And
If we can't afford to put an addition on the house, we don't. And I think at some point, we have to be the adults in the room and say, hey, we can't afford this.
we
can
are,
do the math and see where we're at. Be practical.
we are spending more than we take in, have for as long as we've been here. And I understand that, the need here. But we're not being fiscally conservative enough.
I'll remind the council that we're not spending more than what we have. We actually added more than $1 million to the budget last year, projected to add a little bit more, considering that a lot of our sales tax revenues and other revenues in the city of Plattsburgh come in well under budgeted. Goes back to the same concern and conversation we had about a 5-year plan, that you look at that and it's a doom and gloom scenario, and then you make decisions, sometimes accurate, sometimes rash, but when you look at a doom and gloom scenario and say we're gonna be underwater in 5 years. It's not accurate.
Well,
That's what the plan is.
Excuse me, that's not my point. My taxes went up 14% last year. Okay, so it is affecting people in the city, and I was probably one of the lucky ones. I've talked to people where their taxes have gone up 20% and 25%. That comes out of people's household budget and comes out of their pockets. That's something we need to pay attention to. We are raising the taxes here in the city by default every year with these assessment raises. Let's be realistic. It comes out of the homeowner's pockets and the taxpayers.
But we're also
It's not
never,
free.
we can't reduce taxes by 20%, though. There's never gonna be a way to compensate for that. Property values are going to go up and they're going to keep going up. And the best we can do is keep the tax where it was, or maybe lower by 1 or 2%, but that's not going to offset the way the property values are going to raise.
Councilor Kelly.
I apologize for leaving, and I assume that we're talking about the ambulance proposal right now.
That's accurate.
Is that correct? Okay. In 2020, I believe it was, Mr. Marks did a wonderful analysis for us of how much the ambulance costs us to operate. And he found that the second ambulance that we have in force actually lost a large sum of money in that year. And I asked for an accounting of how much did it lose in 2021, and I never got it. And it's my fault. I never really pressed the issue or asked for it more than once, I think. But anyway, it makes me wonder. We have an agreement with the fire department and MOA, as I understand it, that we will run a second ambulance, and that MOA ends in December, I believe. So my question would be, well, what does the future of the fire department look like? Are we going to renew that MOA and continue to run a second ambulance at a loss every year? Are we going to revisit that and perhaps eliminate one ambulance and run the one that's profitable? So there's a lot of things to think about. So therefore, I would recommend that we remove this from the agenda until those questions are asked. I would be certainly happy to entertain, the thought of a new ambulance if it can be justified. I too remember Chief Lawless talking to us about the necessity of having a fire engine. I don't remember the same discussion about the ambulance. It may have been, there may have been discussion about it, but I don't recall it. So I would recommend that we hold off on the ambulance, but continue to discuss the fire engine. So I'm going to make a motion to remove this from tonight's agenda.
Motion withdrawn, Councilor Taylor, second by Councilor Bob. Roll call.
Councilor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs,
Yes.
Councilor Talon,
Yes.
Councilor Bob,
Yes.
Councilor Moore,
Yes,
Carried.
item 7.163, authorizing bond issuance to pay for the cost of purchasing the Enquiry.
Motion, Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Bob. Discussion.
Now, I will talk about this one because Chief Lawless did talk to us at length about just what a precarious position we're in with our fire engines. And the fire engine that he says we've been nursing along for at least 5 years is pretty much at the end of its useful life. So I feel a little more comfortable about this, even though it's a larger expense. It does seem to me to make sense.
Well, and as he explained it to us, not only will it take 2 to 3 years to get it, even approving it now, but the cost is only going to keep going up. I think he even told us that the last estimate was significantly less than this most recent one. So they only get more expensive.
I have the same argument that I had before, but I'm not going to repeat it.
Roll call.
Councilor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs,
No.
Councilor Talon,
Yes.
Councilor Bob,
Yes.
Councilor Moore,
No,
Yes.
Mayor, yes.
Carried. We are not, there is no need for executive session. Is there any new business to come before this council?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I just want to make people aware that, it's, it's nice to be nice to cats that are just roaming around your neighborhood, but if you keep feeding the feral cats, they're just gonna keep coming back and staying in the neighborhoods and destroying parts of property. So I just want to ask people to just kind of be mindful about, like, not feeding feral cats if possible, just like, we all want to do the nice thing, but it's become a problem in a lot of neighborhoods. So, and in summertime, it's definitely noticeable.
Thank you. New business. Seeing none, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilor Bob, second. Councilor Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now